Staying consistent isn't about having more motivation. It's about becoming someone who keeps moving even when motivation disappears. Most people wait until they feel inspired, confident, or ready before they take action. But life doesn't reward those who wait. It rewards those who continue. Every promise you break to yourself weakens your confidence, while every small promise you keep strengthens your character. The greatest battle is never against the world. It is against the part of you that always seeks comfort over growth. If you cannot rely on yourself, no achievement will ever feel enough. But when you learn to show up every single day, regardless of your emotions, you build something that cannot be taken away. Self-respect. Consistency is not a talent, not a gift, and not luck. It is a decision you make repeatedly. One day, one choice, and one step at a time. Motivation feels powerful, but it is one of the least reliable forces you can build your life upon. It comes unexpectedly, fills you with energy for a moment, and then quietly disappears when life becomes uncomfortable. Many people spend years waiting for the perfect feeling before they begin. They tell themselves they will start tomorrow because tomorrow they will have more energy. They believe next week they will feel more confident. They imagine that one day they will wake up excited to do everything they have been avoiding. That day rarely arrives. Feelings change every hour, every day, and every season of life. If your actions depend on your emotions, then your progress will always rise and fall with your mood. Discipline is different. Discipline does not ask how you feel before it decides what to do. It understands that emotions are temporary, but your actions shape your future. The person who succeeds is not always the most talented or the most intelligent. Often, it is the one who continues when everyone else has stopped. They understand that waiting for motivation is like waiting for perfect weather before leaving your house. There will always be a reason to delay. There will always be discomfort, uncertainty, or fear standing in your way. Every morning, you are presented with a choice. One voice tells you to stay comfortable, to postpone your goals, and to convince yourself that one missed day does not matter. The other voice reminds you of the person you want to become. Most people think the battle is outside of them, but it is within. It is the silent conversation that happens before anyone else sees your actions. It is the moment when nobody is watching, and you decide whether your excuses will control your day or your values will. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to suffer. It is about teaching yourself that your future is more important than your present comfort. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it often steals from tomorrow. Every time you choose the easier path without purpose, why you make the harder path in the future even more difficult. Every responsibility you avoid becomes heavier. Every habit you ignore becomes harder to build. Every opportunity you delay slowly begins to disappear. Many people believe disciplined individuals never struggle. They imagine that successful people wake up full of energy every day, eager to work. The truth is much simpler. They experience the same doubts, the same tiredness, and the same lack of motivation as everyone else. The difference is that they do not negotiate with those feelings. They recognize them, but they do not allow them to become their leader. They understand that feelings are visitors. They come and go. Decisions remain. Imagine planting a tree. You do not dig it out every morning to check if it has grown. You water it consistently because you trust the process. Discipline works in the same way. Many of the results you seek are invisible for a long time. You exercise for weeks before noticing physical changes. You study for months before seeing significant improvement. You save money, little by little, before it becomes financial security. Those who depend on motivation become frustrated because they expect immediate rewards. Those who practice discipline understand that meaningful growth happens quietly. There will be days when your effort seems pointless, days when nothing appears to improve, days when quitting feels reasonable. Those are the moments that shape your identity. Anyone can continue when everything is easy. Anyone can work when they feel inspired. Character is revealed when the excitement has disappeared and the responsibility remains. What you repeatedly do during ordinary days becomes the foundation of your extraordinary results. Discipline also creates freedom, even though many people believe the opposite. They think discipline limits their life because it requires routines and commitment. In reality, a lack of discipline creates dependence. If you cannot control your habits will control you. If you cannot manage your attention, distractions will manage your life. If you cannot say no to temporary pleasure will decide your future. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel in the moment. Freedom is having the ability to choose what truly matters over what merely feels good, right? Now, every promise you make to yourself has value. When you repeatedly break those promises, you begin to lose trust in your own words. You stop believing yourself. You set goals, but secretly expect yourself to fail, because your past actions have taught you that your commitments are temporary. Discipline rebuilds that trust, one action at a time. Each time you follow through, no matter how small the task, you prove to yourself that your word means something. Self-confidence is not created by positive thinking alone. It is built through evidence. The evidence comes from showing yourself that you can be counted on. Do not ask yourself whether you feel motivated today. Ask yourself whether the person you want to become would complete this task. Shift your attention away from emotion and toward identity. Every action becomes a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Skip one workout, ignore one page of reading, avoid one difficult conversation, and perhaps nothing changes immediately. Repeat those choices for months, and your identity slowly transforms in a direction you never intended. In the same way, every small act of discipline shapes a stronger version of yourself long before anyone else notices the difference. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become dependable in your own eyes. When you stop chasing motivation and start building discipline, your progress no longer depends on circumstances, your mood, or the opinions of other people. You become someone who acts because your values demand it, not because your emotions approve of it. Every promise you make to yourself carries more weight than you realize. It is easy to think that the small commitments you break do not matter. You tell yourself that skipping today's workout is harmless, that delaying your work until tomorrow is acceptable, or that one missed habit will not change anything. The problem is rarely the action itself. The real damage happens in the relationship you build with yourself. Every time you say you will do something and then choose not to do it, you quietly teach your mind that your own words cannot be trusted. Over time, this becomes your identity. You become someone who speaks with confidence but acts with hesitation. Imagine making promises to another person every single day and breaking them again and again. Eventually, they would stop believing you. They would smile politely when you spoke, but deep inside they would expect disappointment. The same thing happens within you. Your mind listens to every promise you make. When you repeatedly fail to honor your own commitments, your confidence begins to disappear. Not because you lack ability, but because you have stopped trusting yourself. This is why so many people struggle with consistency. They believe they need more motivation, better strategies, or perfect timing. In reality, they have spent years proving to themselves that they rarely follow through. Every broken promise becomes evidence against their own potential. Then, when they decide to pursue a meaningful goal, another part of their mind quietly whispers, "You have said this before." You never continue. Self-confidence is not created by repeating positive affirmations while ignoring your actions. Confidence is earned. It grows from evidence. Every time you complete a task you promised yourself, no matter how small, you create proof that you are dependable. That proof becomes stronger than any temporary feeling of doubt. Confidence is simply the memory of promises kept. The size of the promise is not what matters. Many people make enormous commitments because they want immediate transformation. They promise to wake up at 5 every morning, exercise 2 hours every day, read multiple books each week, completely change their diet, and eliminate every bad habit at once. For a few days they feel excited. Then reality arrives. They become overwhelmed, miss one day, and abandon everything because perfection has already been broken. Small promises have incredible power because they are easier to protect. Reading 5 pages every day may not seem impressive. Walking for 20 minutes may appear insignificant. Drinking enough water, making your bed, writing 1 paragraph, or spending 15 focused minutes learning a new skill may feel too simple to matter. Yet these small actions create something much greater than immediate results. They create trust. When you repeatedly honor small commitments, your mind begins to expect consistency instead of excuses. Your identity starts to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who occasionally works hard and begin seeing yourself as someone who always follows through. That identity influences every future decision. Instead of asking whether you feel like doing something, you simply recognize that keeping your word is part of who you are. There will always be reasons to break your promises. You will feel tired. You will become busy. Unexpected problems will appear. Your emotions will fluctuate. None of these experiences are unique to you. Every disciplined person experiences them. The difference is not the absence of difficulty. The difference is deciding that your commitment deserves more respect than your temporary discomfort. Sometimes the promise you keep will not produce visible results immediately. You may study for weeks without seeing dramatic improvement. You may exercise consistently without noticing physical changes. You may work on your goals without receiving recognition from anyone. During these moments, it is tempting to believe your effort is being wasted, but something important is happening beneath the surface. Every completed action strengthens your character, long before it changes your circumstances. Character is built through repetition, not through grand moments. Most people imagine life-changing success arriving through one extraordinary decision. More often, it is the accumulation of ordinary choices made consistently over time. Each small promise honored becomes another brick in the foundation of your future. Individually, the bricks appear insignificant. Together, they support everything you hope to build. It is also important to forgive yourself without giving yourself permission to quit. There will be days when you fail. You may miss a habit. You may lose focus. You may break a promise. Failure itself is not the greatest danger. The greater danger is allowing one mistake to become a new identity. Missing one day does not define you. Deciding that the missed day means you should stop entirely creates the real problem. Or return to your commitment as quickly as possible. Protect the habit before protecting your pride. Your relationship with yourself determines the quality of every other relationship in your life. If you cannot rely on your own words, it becomes difficult to rely on your own decisions. Doubt begins to appear in every challenge because your past actions have weakened your belief. When you consistently keep your promises, even the smallest ones, you begin carrying yourself differently. You stop needing constant encouragement from others because your confidence is supported by your own actions. Each morning presents another opportunity to prove something to yourself. Nobody else may notice whether you completed your routine, honored your commitment, or remained faithful to your goals. The world may never applaud those small victories, yet those quiet moments are where your identity is shaped. Every promise you keep reminds you that your future is being built by today's decisions, not by tomorrow's intentions. Every action becomes another reason to trust yourself, another reason to believe your own words, another reason to continue walking the path you chose with honesty and discipline. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to become consistent is believing that success requires dramatic changes from the very beginning. They create impossible routines, set unrealistic expectations, and convince themselves that if they cannot do everything, there is no point in doing anything. This way of thinking feels ambitious, but it often leads to failure. Consistency is not built by doing extraordinary things once in a while. It is built by doing ordinary things every single day until they become a natural part of who you are. The human mind naturally resists sudden change. When you try to transform your entire life overnight, your brain treats it like a threat. You may feel excited for the first few days because the motivation is fresh, but eventually that excitement fades. Then every habit begins to feel heavy. Waking up early becomes difficult. Exercising feels exhausting. Reading seems boring. Working on your goals becomes something you constantly postpone. You begin blaming yourself for lacking discipline, when the real problem is that you expected yourself to carry a weight you were never prepared to lift. Small habits solve this problem because they remove the excuse of difficulty. If your goal is to read, begin with just a few pages. If your goal is to exercise, begin with 10 minutes. If your goal is to write, begin with a single paragraph. If your goal is meditation, begin with only a few quiet moments. The purpose is not to impress anyone. The purpose is to make starting so easy that avoiding it becomes harder than doing it. Many people underestimate the power of small actions because they are obsessed with immediate results. They want visible success as quickly as possible. They judge today's effort by today's outcome. But life rarely works that way. The smallest habits often produce the greatest transformations because they are repeated over long periods of time. A single drop of water appears weak, yet thousands of drops, falling continuously, can shape solid rock. It is not intensity that creates lasting change. It is repetition. Every habit you repeat sends a message to your mind about who you are. When you consistently perform even the smallest positive action, your identity begins to change. You stop saying, "I am trying to become disciplined," and slowly become someone who naturally follows through. This shift is far more valuable than temporary motivation because identity influences behavior without constant effort. People often focus too much on achieving goals and too little on building systems. A goal is something you hope to reach one day. A system is what you do every day, regardless of how you feel. Goals give direction, but habits create progress. Without a daily system, even the strongest desire eventually fades. You cannot rely on inspiration forever. You need routines that continue working when excitement disappears. Think about brushing your teeth. You probably do not wake up every morning asking yourself whether you feel motivated enough to brush them. You simply do it because it has become part of your identity and routine. Imagine if your most important habits reached that same level of automatic behavior. Imagine if exercising, reading, learning, saving money, or working toward your dreams became as natural as brushing your teeth. That level of consistency is not achieved through motivation. It is achieved through repetition. Another reason simple habits are powerful is that they reduce mental resistance. The hardest part of almost any task is not completing it. The hardest part is beginning. Your mind creates excuses before you even start. It tells you that you are tired, busy, distracted, or not in the right mood. Small habits bypass these excuses because they require so little effort that your brain has fewer reasons to resist. Once you begin, something interesting happens. Starting creates momentum. Reading one page often becomes 10 pages. Walking for 5 minutes often becomes 20. Writing one sentence frequently becomes an entire page. Action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. Waiting to feel inspired keeps you inactive. Beginning while you feel uninspired often generates the energy you believed you were missing. Your environment also influences whether your habits survive. If every positive action requires unnecessary effort, consistency becomes much harder. Place your books where you can easily see them. Prepare your workout clothes before going to bed. Keep distractions away during focused work. Arrange your surroundings so that the right choice becomes the easiest choice. Your environment quietly shapes your decisions more than you realize. Do not measure your progress only by visible achievements. Measure it by the number of days you showed up. There will be times when your performance is average. There will be days when your energy is low and your results are unimpressive. Those days still matter because they strengthen the habit of consistency. A habit survives not because every day is perfect, but because you refuse to disappear. Missing one day should never become permission to miss another. Life will interrupt your routines. Unexpected responsibilities will appear. Illness, travel, or difficult moments may prevent you from following your usual schedule. Accept that these interruptions are part of life, without allowing them to become permanent. Return to your habit as quickly as possible. Protect the rhythm more than the intensity. Many people fail because they judge themselves too harshly during the early stages of growth. They expect themselves to perform like experts while still thinking like beginners. Growth requires patience. A tree does not become tall in a single season. Strong foundations are built slowly, often without visible signs of progress. Every simple habit repeated today becomes another layer of strength beneath tomorrow's success. Your future is shaped less by the occasional moments when you perform exceptionally well, and more by the quiet routines you choose when nobody is watching. The habits that seem too small to matter today eventually become the standards by which you live, the actions that define your character, and the invisible force that carries you forward. Even on the days when motivation is nowhere to be found, your feelings are not a reliable guide for your actions. There will be mornings when you wake up energized, focused, and ready to conquer every challenge in front of you. There will also be mornings when you feel tired before the day has even begun, when your mind is full of excuses, and when even the smallest task feels heavier than it should. If you only move forward when you feel inspired, then your progress will always depend on something you cannot control. Emotions change constantly. They rise and fall like the weather. Building your life around something so temporary guarantees inconsistency. Many people believe that disciplined individuals enjoy doing difficult things every day. They imagine that successful people always feel motivated to exercise, study, work, or improve themselves. The truth is much simpler. They often do not feel like doing those things either. The difference is that they have stopped treating their emotions as commands. They acknowledge how they feel without allowing those feelings to decide what happens next. Think about how often you have delayed an important task because you were waiting to feel ready. You promised yourself you would start tomorrow because tomorrow you expected to have more energy. Then tomorrow became another tomorrow, and another after that. Weeks passed. Months disappeared. The opportunity remained the same, but your excuses became more convincing. Waiting for the perfect emotional state is one of the easiest ways to remain exactly where you are. The mind naturally seeks comfort. It is designed to avoid unnecessary effort and preserve energy. Whenever you choose growth, your mind often responds by offering reasons to stay where it feels safe. It reminds you how tired you are. It suggests that one more day of rest will not matter. It convinces you that beginning later will somehow produce better results. These thoughts feel reasonable because they promise immediate comfort, but comfort rarely asks whether it is helping your future. Growth almost always begins with discomfort. Learning a new skill feels awkward because you are unfamiliar with it. Building physical strength requires challenging your body beyond its current limits. Developing emotional resilience demands facing situations you would rather avoid. Every meaningful transformation asks you to leave behind the familiar version of yourself. If discomfort becomes your reason to stop, then growth becomes impossible. There is an important difference between listening to your body and obeying every emotion. Your body sometimes needs genuine rest. Ignoring exhaustion, illness, or recovery can be harmful, but most of the time, what you experience is not physical inability. It is mental resistance. The task appears larger in your imagination than it actually is. Once you begin, you often discover that you had far more energy than you believed. The hardest part of almost every meaningful action is the first few minutes. Sitting down to study feels difficult until you begin reading. Putting on your running shoes feels difficult until you start moving. Opening your laptop to work feels difficult until your attention settles into the task. Resistance is strongest before action. Once momentum begins, the struggle usually becomes much smaller than your mind predicted. This is why successful people develop the habit of acting before they feel ready. They understand that action creates emotion far more often than emotion creates action. You do not need confidence before taking the first step. Confidence grows because you took the first step. You do not need motivation before beginning your work. Motivation often appears after you have already started. Waiting for the feeling first places your future in the hands of chance. Every day, you make countless small decisions that either strengthen or weaken your discipline. Choosing to get out of bed when the alarm rings. Choosing to finish the final part of a project when your attention begins to fade. Choosing to continue practicing when progress feels invisible. These moments seem insignificant on their own, yet they quietly shape your identity. Every difficult choice completed becomes evidence that you are capable of leading yourself instead of following your moods. Many people quit because they misunderstand what consistency looks like. They believe consistency means feeling equally excited every day. That expectation creates disappointment because no human being experiences constant enthusiasm. Consistency means showing up with different emotions, but the same commitment. Some days you will perform at your highest level. Other days your effort will feel average. Both days matter because both days reinforce the habit of continuing. Your emotions deserve to be noticed, but they should not always be obeyed. Feeling bored does not mean the task lacks value. Feeling afraid does not mean you should stop. Feeling uncertain does not mean you are moving in the wrong direction. Emotions provide information, but they do not always provide wisdom. Wisdom comes from remembering what truly matters beyond the present moment. Ask yourself a simple question whenever you are tempted to quit because you do not feel like continuing. Will this feeling still matter a week from now? Will it matter a year from now? Most of the emotions that seem overwhelming today disappear much faster than we expect. The actions you choose during those temporary moments, however, often remain with you for years. A single decision to continue can create opportunities you cannot yet imagine. A single decision to stop can quietly delay your future without you even realizing it. There is a quiet strength that develops when you repeatedly choose action over emotion. You begin realizing that your feelings no longer control your identity. You discover that discomfort is temporary, while self-respect lasts much longer. Every time you continue despite resistance, you become slightly stronger than the version of yourself that wanted to give up. That strength cannot be borrowed from anyone else. It is earned through repeated moments of choosing purpose over comfort, commitment over convenience, and long-term growth over temporary relief. One of the fastest ways to lose consistency is to become obsessed with perfection. Many people begin their journey with excitement, but instead of focusing on steady improvement, they create impossible standards for themselves. They believe every workout must be perfect, every project must be flawless, every decision must be the best possible choice, and every day must be productive from beginning to end. The moment reality fails to match those expectations, disappointment takes over. They begin believing they have failed, even though they were making progress. Perfection creates pressure. Progress creates momentum. There is a significant difference between the two. Progress accepts that growth is a process filled with mistakes, lessons, and adjustments. Perfection demands immediate excellence. One mindset encourages action, while the other often creates hesitation. When you believe your first attempt has to be perfect, you become afraid of beginning at all. Fear of making mistakes becomes stronger than the desire to improve. Think about a child learning to walk. No one expects that child to stand up and immediately move with perfect balance. Falling is understood as part of learning. Every step, every stumble, and every attempt teaches the child something valuable. Yet as adults, we often expect ourselves to master new skills without struggling. We criticize ourselves for making beginner mistakes, forgetting that every expert was once completely inexperienced. The desire to be perfect often comes from comparing yourself to people who have already spent years developing their skills. You see someone's success, but not the countless ordinary days that built it. You admire the finished result without witnessing the thousands of imperfect attempts that came before it. Every accomplished person has produced work they were not proud of. Every successful athlete has experienced failure. Every confident speaker has once been nervous. Every disciplined person has struggled with consistency at some point. What separates them is not the absence of mistakes, but the willingness to continue despite them. Mistakes are not evidence that you are incapable. They are evidence that you are participating in the process of growth. If you never make mistakes, you are probably remaining inside your comfort zone. Growth requires experimenting, adjusting, and learning through experience. Every mistake teaches something that success alone cannot reveal. Failure is painful, but repeated avoidance of failure is far more dangerous because it prevents development altogether. Many people abandon their habits after missing a single day because perfection has already been broken. They think, I missed today's workout, so this week is ruined. They skip one study session and convince themselves there is no reason to continue. One unhealthy meal becomes an excuse for abandoning an entire nutrition plan. This way of thinking transforms one small mistake into a permanent setback. The problem was never the missed day. The problem was believing that consistency requires perfection. Consistency is not about never making mistakes. It is about returning quickly after you make them. Missing once is an event. Repeating the mistake because you believe you have already failed becomes a habit. The strongest people are not those who never fall. They are those who refuse to stay on the ground. Every return strengthens your identity more than expecting yourself never to struggle. Progress often happens so gradually that it becomes difficult to notice while you are living through it. You may feel as though nothing is changing because you measure yourself every day. Just as you rarely notice your own hair growing, you often fail to recognize your own personal growth until much later. Looking back after several months, you suddenly realize how much stronger, wiser, calmer, or more disciplined you have become. Small improvements accumulate quietly before they become obvious. Imagine climbing a mountain during heavy fog. You cannot always see the summit. Sometimes you cannot even see more than a few steps ahead. If you become discouraged because the destination remains invisible, you may stop climbing altogether. Yet every step still brings